coming to our speaker today is Mr. Prashant Shukla. He is currently the managing director of Udemy for India and South Asia. Prashant is one of the outstanding leaders in India's technology sector. Before joining Udemy, he served as the National Technology Officer for Microsoft, where he successfully drove the first TV white space pilot to provide an alternative to cheap rural internet. As well as he also drove the design and framework for the first Indian digital village and its implementation in Harisal, Maharashtra. Mr. Prashant Shukla is also an alumnus of IIT Kanpur, and he had co-authored book on electronic structure, and he has been a popular speaker in various platforms such as TEDx. In fact, I personally recommend you to go and check out his TEDx talk on how technology can transform rural India after this webinar. Welcome to INDIAai webinar, Mr. Prashant.
Thank you very much, and that was a very elaborate introduction. So, in essence, I think the fundamental question that we have to answer is, why is AI in education important? Why do we care about it? What's in it that's so important for the rest of the education system? So my answer to that is AI is not new. It has been around for more than 20, 30, 40 years. In fact, the first algorithms about artificial intelligence and how they can be used to solve problems has been on for over the last 30 years. What has changed in recent times is this on-demand computing that is possible with cloud computing. Now, what has resulted as a result of it, what has happened as a result of it, is that now you can create those complex algorithms that can, decipher insights from humongous amount of data purely by the power of machines that are running on the cloud. Now, this kind of, processing speed was not possible, 20, 30 years from now. So artificial intelligence is an idea whose time has come. But the challenge is, whereas in the industry, it is being adopted left, right, and center, particularly in the educational curriculum, especially in India, we're still stuck with the curriculum of the 90s and, the morph that has happened in the year 2000 and so on and so forth. So the past 2 decades, our educational curriculum, particularly for engineering, has not changed that much. And my answer is AI is something that spans across. It is not just about engineering. It is also about, people who are doing MBAs, making business decisions, at some level understanding artificial intelligence and its import in their day-to-day business is extremely important. I'll give you some very, very interesting examples of things where AI can be an amazing tool. If only, our colleges were to step up and take these as challenging measures. Now, these are just illustrative examples to push home the point that, our college curriculums, our student bodies need to really take this in the earnest in solving meaningful problems. And I mean meaningful problems. This is not just about learning from a book and understanding what AI is, but applying it to real meaningful problems that can change the face of India in a significant way. So I'll give you one very interesting example that has been bothering me for a long time, and it is very interesting problem to solve if we can. Imagine every year we have some crop growing in excess, another crop that is below par. So some days we have pulses that are in excess and wheat is less. Oil seeds are in excess and sugar cane is less, and so on and so forth. Now imagine if some of the student body took it as one of their research project and said, we have weather data available for the last 30 years. And by the way, we also have the food consumption pattern available for the last 30 years. You know how much wheat on an average is being consumed and catering for the fact that the population is growing at a certain level, how much pulses will be needed, how much oil seeds will be needed, and so on and so forth. And you combine that with the rain data and the real weather data, which says this year the sowing has been this much, and the weather pattern, given the factors of the weather pattern, the likely produce will be this much. If you do that 3 months or 4 months in advance, the decision tree will enable you to figure out what exactly will be the shortfall. And by the time that shortfall time comes, import could be devised, the shortfall in different region could be leveled out, and so on and so forth. A problem for AI. This is just one example of a very meaningful problem that the student body could take up. I could talk about AI in all its measure, whether it be medicine, whether it be healthcare, even in COVID times, COVID-19 times, some bright student somewhere will figure out that looking at your facial features and your breathing patterns and some other parameters, your temperature, etc., the probability of you being COVID-19 effective is high. So those kind of predictive models, which earlier were not possible, can now be run on large sample of data and used to draw insights which are catering to many of these interesting problems that plague our nation in multiple ways. Educational institutions today, and I hate to say this, I've been talking to a huge number of educational institutions. They are adhering to a topic. They are completing that curriculum. But the flexibility in it that needs to be kept in order for the students to apply their mind to solving some of these newer problems, that flexibility I have not seen on the ground. Now, I'd be the first to admit that this government under Prime Minister Narendra Modi has done humongous steps forward. If you look at the last 6 years with the last 30 years, there's a marked difference. There's no doubt about it. I mean, you look at the SWAYAM platform that this government brought about. It's a great start of a new thought process. If you look at the curriculum where they are allowing 20% of the credits to be run online, again, a very innovative idea, but has it really gone and made an impact in the ground? I believe the regulators, and that is Ministry of HRD and so on and so forth, are making giant leap forwards. But they are regulators. They finally cannot do the implementation. And that implementation will only happen if two specific things happen. First, the regulators put these principles out in educational field. The educators, the college boards, the principals, the teachers, the educators. I always say that the regulators and the educators have to go hand in hand. So now that the regulators are moving at a high speed, the educators need to draw forward and take full advantage of it in morphing the educational curriculum to bring AI in multiple folds and bring out meaningful problems that can be solved. In fact, I was thinking the other day, why is it not possible to put together, prizes and awards, perhaps 5-10 lakhs or that kind of a thing by the educational bodies, and say if somebody could figure out a mechanism to solve the software by putting together an algorithm using AI to discover the possible potential population of COVID infected, that will be a meaningful problem to solve. But for that, the educators really need to put it in their head that their educational curriculum needs to be second to none when it comes to adopting AI in their everyday curriculum. And in my opinion, like I pointed out, AI, artificial intelligence is not just a vertical. By that I mean it is not just relevant to students that are in the engineering sciences or computer science or electrical engineering or mechanical engineering and so on and so forth. It is equally relevant to the business guys, the MBAs and the BBAs and the Bachelor of Arts and so on. A basic understanding of the impact artificial intelligence can have on businesses is amazing. An example of that, again, in the financial industry is stopping the bank frauds. The credit cards that are being used, sometimes people overdraw from it, sometimes people underdraw from it. Use that to improve the credit scores of people. If somebody has been paying regularly and the others have not, what is the predictive model for increasing their, credit card limit, and so on and so forth. So, AI in its entirety can affect almost all walks of life that I can think of, whether it be medicine, whether it be our agriculture, whether it be our manufacturing industries, whether it be our financial industries, even retail. What kind of inventory should we be keeping? Is in a particular area, if you have a Reliance Fresh or a mom and pop shop selling, whatever they are selling, vegetables and everyday produce, what does it take for you to have predictive models that says on an average in this particular region the consumption is so much? So fast moving consumer goods, the Unilevers of the world, and the rest of it, they can use these mechanisms to stock up appropriately, neither more nor less. So again, the reason why I'm giving these very ground examples from the ground is to give a sense of the value of artificial intelligence in all walks of our life. And if it is adopted in significant ways in educational curriculums, then the students who graduate in the next year or 2 years or 3 years or 5 years, if this is embedded and inculcated in their system from the word go, it is at that time that they can come up with brilliant answers in all walks of life and change the world that we see around us. Change not only India but also the rest of the world. Our Prime Minister has been pointing out in no uncertain terms, and rightly so, that we have this dividend. We have this dividend of age, inspiration, and brilliance of our student body. We have this dividend of really young people full of energy and great ideas. If only they can be let loose in areas that matter for India. I forgot to mention defense. All these areas, they could turn the country around in no uncertain terms. And it is my firm belief that the change in the society, happens by individuals in the age gap of 18 to 40. Those are the 6 or 8 years, or after high school. Those are the 6 years up to master's education, and perhaps 8 to 10 years in PhD, when these students, if guided directly and guided appropriately, can make a huge change in the social system. So that's why AI is so important. And I hope I've addressed this thought of why AI is so relevant in the educational system today. We can go on with umpteen number of examples, but that's something that is extremely important.
Sir, to add something to what you said, I hope I'm audible. Prashant sir, so we spoke about the need for regulation and educators to go hand in hand, as well as the young population we have. And we have a huge demand for AI skill right now in multiple industries, not just IT industry, even in other industry. But there is a gap between the quality of supply and the demand we are facing. So what do you think are the necessary measures we should take to cover this gap, especially in terms of learning?
Yeah, absolutely. That's an excellent point. What are the concrete steps? What are the 3, 4, 5, 7 things that the educators could do and the student body could, process? So the first and foremost, and COVID times has shown us in no uncertain term, coronavirus has actually drawn our attention to the fact that digital platforms is the way forward. Online learning is the way forward, simply because in some ways it is superior to face-to-face learning. Let me give you an example. Today, you have some of the best brains in India in educational curriculum. But if you look at the statistics, and I'm not the one who's created the statistics, I'm quoting numbers. you will see the industry saying between 50 to 80% of graduates who come out are unemployable. Now, you can argue with the statistics. You can say, Prashant, it's not 80%, it's 60%, it's 70%. And I won't argue with that number. The point I'm trying to make is, why does the industry feel that a very large chunk of our graduates are not ready to be imbued into the spirit of the industry, into that area of innovation, which they should learn or go for from day one of their job? Why is this feedback at very large scale coming from the industry that most of our graduates who are coming out from educational curriculum are not employable? And again, like I said, you can argue on the statistics, but you can't argue on the clear feedback from the industry. And the reason for that, and that tells you what we need to do in the educational curriculum. The reason for that is we are stuck in the curriculum of the 80s when it comes to educational institutions. The regulators have done a fine job in the last 4 or 5 years to show this path forward. The educators now need to come forward and say, we will adopt online learning in our autonomous university, and we will bring in the best of brains from anywhere in the world. Why am I advocating online learning in a significant way? Think about it. Many of these tier 2 and tier 3 colleges are not able to get the right faculty. Now imagine if they said 20 to 30% of our entire curriculum will be taught by bringing the best brains, not just from India, but from anywhere in the world. And we will do it by the magic of that knowledge that is flowing through the fiber optic network. Now imagine if we had tried to solve this problem 8 years ago. We could not have done it. But the central government, in its wisdom, has invested so much money in putting together, laying down fibers to the farthest corners of the world. I hear that there are 250,000 gram panchayats that the Department of Telecom, the Ministry of Telecom, has enabled. What a boon! But the pipe is only as good as the information that flows through it. So tremendous opportunity for the educators to say, one, we will change our old ways and we will adopt online learning curriculum, whether it comes from Europe or US or Germany or France or India or Japan or China or anywhere else in the world. The best brains in the world will enter our classroom and interact with our students through the magic of those fiber optic network that has been laid down as information highway with our government. Then that dream will be complete. The first part of the dream was to put the infrastructure. By and large, today, high-speed internets are available in most part of the country. Whatever has not been done, Reliance Jio has gone ahead and fulfilled that also. I see people even in rural India on high-speed mobile platform. But the thought process amongst educators has to change. So that's part one. The board members, the principal in educational colleges, the decision maker in private and public engineering institutes and MBA institute and business institute, they need to change their thought and move forward with the vision of the next 20 years rather than be stuck with the past 20 years. Our government has moved, which is really interesting. Usually the government follows the vision. Here the government is leading the vision. So the rest of the educators need to come online. The second point that I want to make is, for any change to happen, there needs to be a demand from the college community. Suppose today the student body gets together and tells their teachers that we need to learn about this. We need to learn about this because we hear about it in internet, we hear about it in YouTube, we hear about all these interesting experiments that are going on. And please, please, please bring about this change in the curriculum. Allow us not just this onesie, twosie effort where we go and learn on our own effort. We go and try on our own learning about AI. But instead, you as educators kindly enable it in a systematic way as a part of our educational curriculum. Imagine if the educators and the student body could do that, where that effort that the students are doing on their own, they are learning AI, whether the colleges like it or not. We see this on the Udemy platform where the growth has been, phenomenal, especially so in the COVID times. We see that. We see that student body is interested. But weaving this AI system, AI knowledge, artificial intelligence curriculum into the educational curriculum means they don't have to work twice. They actually are incented to learn about it, because not only are they, learning about it, they're also getting credits for it. And remember, the day has 24 hours, whether it be the prime minister or the farmer on the field. The day only has 24 hours. If you burden the students in learning everything that they need to learn and expect them to go the extra mile, those 2 3 hours that they have between the colleges and coming home and getting ready for the next day, in trying on their own to learn these knowledge, this information is not going to happen. So again, coming back to our central point, two key things. The regulators have done their job. The educators, the board members of educational institutions, the decision makers of these large bodies, they need to say our curriculum will have 20 to 30 to 40% of digital online learning powered by the best teachers in the world, not just India, in the world. Because pool, that pool of knowledge, when it reaches these young minds, they will definitely create magic. And the India that we see it will change at an accelerated pace. And finally, the student body, keep the pressure up. Ask your educators, why are we not learning this? If you are in a tier 2 rural urban village, tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities, demand it of your principals and board members and decision makers in your private and public educational institution, that this is the need of the hour. When are you going to start it? And if there is a problem, tell us. We will join hands with you and make a demand for it. Ask whatever are the regulations necessary for online learning to be done. And again, like I said, this is the only way. There is no way you will have that many teachers physically present in your colleges with the level of knowledge that is required to teach you in meaningful ways. But if you look at the total number of educators all over the world, millions of them, and allow them to enter your classroom through the fiber optic, high speed digital platforms, you will be able to accomplish this in no uncertain terms.
Sir, I want to jump in here. So one of our audience, Mr. Arun Kumar, pointed out that one of the big challenges for us is we still have this legacy education system. I think at the same point you mentioned that our education system is still stuck in 80, right? So we have the infrastructure, we have our policymakers taking a very high level of interest in initiatives to bring these emerging technologies to colleges and schools, especially for graduate level education. So the question here is now, how will we tackle this? How will this tackle these challenges when you have so many challenges? Like again, coming back to the point, our education system, the core concept, we are still lagging behind in terms of many decades when that is happening.
Absolutely. So two parts. Sometimes, when you look at your house, have you had a situation where you've lived in the same house for 10, 20, 30, 40 years and collected a lot of junk? So much junk that finally it begins to appear everywhere. A lot of educational curriculum in India is, I hate to use the word junk, but what I want to say is a lot of legacy education in India is imbued with things that were long forgotten everywhere else in the world. We are still looking at computer science and learning data structures from all those old books. We are still going through the same, process of, uh, old educational curriculum. So the first order of business, and this the student body can do actually better than the teachers, in my humble opinion. And I'm putting a thought here because finally it is the student body that will be affected. The student body needs to sit down together and look at what is the best possible curriculum that they would like to learn from. Instead of just leaving it to your educators, why not create a demand for it? Who stops you as a student body to say, let's look at the curriculum in some of the top colleges in the world? And I'm not just talking of IITs and the best engineering colleges in India. I'm saying, what is the best curriculum in Berkeley's and Stanford's and any other top engineering college? Look at their curriculum. They are all online. Look at what your curriculum is and say, if we have to fit a 40-hour week, we don't want to learn A, B, C, D, E, F because X, Y, Z is much better. And that X, Y, Z could be artificial intelligence, that could be cloud computing, that could be machine learning, that could be tensor flows, that could be deep learning algorithms, that could be whole host of region, IoT, virtual labs. That could be so many things. Instead of passively accepting your educational curriculum, you as the eaters of that food need to stand up and say, this food does not taste good. You need to say it. And you need to say then that even though this food does not taste good, if you only added this, and this, if you brought in these 4 5 things, suddenly the curriculum will be better. It is a reverse pressure that you are creating on the teaching community, and from the teaching community into the the board of education of your university, and perhaps from that board of education in your university. I believe if the feedback goes in a concrete way to the government, this government, I'm confident, will hear you with both ears and embrace you with open arms. They've shown that in so many things. They're waiting to hear from you. They have taken, steps that I, in my lifetime, didn't think would happen in India, but it has happened. So you now need to do your part in doing this. Student body, get together, at least put together a draft curriculum that you think will make you better employable, better educated, and provide that feedback to the college boards. What are they going to say? They're going to say, yes, we'll do it, or no, we'll not do it. They can't do any worse than that. If they still put quo status, at least some of the colleges will listen to you. And the peer pressure will start. And the how part of it, how will you bring about this change? That change will start. So that's step one. Step two, connect with your next generation leaders, people and alumni of yours who has graduated. They are in the industry. Talk to them, organize their webinars. You're hearing me speak. Why wouldn't you invite some of them to come and speak to you on what is the real world like when they leave their colleges and enter a TCS or a Infosys or a Wipro or a Cognizant or a whole bunch of other technical colleges or mechanical, the Mahindras, the Tatas, the Aero Defense, and so on. Have them talk to you about what that real world looks like and what was the life like when they went from day 0 of graduation to day 30th or day 90th in their job. What was the delta that they saw, and what could be backward integrated in your curriculum to make you ready on day 0 and not day 180. 6 months of useless time that you go and the colleges come back and say you are not employable. How terrible. 4 years of back-breaking work, doing assignments and everything else, only to hear from some industry expert coming and telling you you are not employable. It's terrible. But suppose you took proactive action, and suppose you said, we will take our fate in our own hands. Gone are the days when just the education boards decide what we will study. We at least have the right to provide feedback to the education boards and say, look, here is the data that we have collected. Here is what our industry peers are saying. Here is what people who have graduated 3 years ahead of us are telling. Why don't you factor this feedback and change our curriculum? And if it is in the hands of the universities, the new government has given a lot of enablement to the autonomous universities. They have the ability to create their own curriculum. So I don't think it is a matter of regulation anymore. The regulation part is done. The power has been imbued and provided in the hands of educational institutions. But the educational institution need to break the past and look to the future. That pressure can only happen when the person who eats that food, when the students who are consuming that curriculum stand up and say, we need it different. So that's two steps. First, understand what your curriculum is going to be like and how digital education can be integrated into your learning process for a much better use of your productive years. The second part is talk to the industry. Ask them, if only we were to adhere to a curriculum that matches with your requirement, what would it be? And how can we backward integrate it into our system so that we study what you want rather than studying something that is archaic and it is stuck in 1980s or 70s in some cases. What good is that knowledge if it can't bring about a change in the society around us, in the industry around us, in the systems around us? And the last part is what I get inspired by is, you know, I come from a rural background. It was thanks to the vision of my mother that I got good education, and I, ended up from rural India to get the top education in IITs, went abroad, and so on and so forth. My learning is intelligence and gray matter is a normal distribution. It is equally distributed in cities as in rural India, as in tier 2 cities. The brilliance of our student body is not limited to metros. You will find some of the brightest minds, the most intelligent people in rural India, and the best and the most inspirational figure in our country is our Prime Minister himself. If you ask him and you look at his life history, isn't it amazingly inspiring to imagine somebody from Vadnagar, a town that I had not heard of till Prime Minister Narendra Modi became Prime Minister or till he became the Chief Minister of Gujarat. I had not heard of Vadnagar in my entire first 30, 40 years. I don't believe it's more than a tier 2 town. I have not been there, but I can't believe it is as large as Ahmedabad or Baroda or Bharuch or Mumbai or Delhi. Vadnagar. If he can come from Vadnagar, work hard in so many ways, and reach where he has reached, it is a message to rural India that you are similarly brilliant. You are similarly great. There is nothing wrong with the brilliance in your head. And whatever delta was there, because the great educational institutions were all in urban cities, now that gap is gone, because through the magic of fiber optic, you have the greatest knowledge on digital platform at your fingertip. whatever little was left around it, most of India uses smartphone. If my statistics is correct, about 500 to 600 million smartphones, even in rural India. Look besides you, check with your neighbor, talk to your, sarpanch. You would not find him, even in rural India, you would not find them without smartphones. What that means is the magic of knowledge is sitting in your hands. You have the digital platform, you can enable it on your mobile platform, and that which was only available to a person in the city is now available to you on a smartphone. So my point is, this is the best time India can have. We need to really look at, the how part of it, and make meaningful problems and education. Open it up, open digital learning up to the 600 or probably 600 people in rural India. And out of that, my guess, and these are, don't quote me on these numbers, I'm just making a rough estimate, 200 million youth in rural India. Imagine if even 20% of it become great engineers. 20%, 10%, 5%, 10 million super engineers and brilliant minds, financiers, MBAs. Look at Reliance Industries, and the example that Dhirubhai Ambani has set. I don't think he had a very great formal education, and yet he broke the mold. Came from, I believe, Jamnagar or some such place. I'm not exactly sure. But these are all examples before you. If they could do it in those hard times, you have a lot more. So I'll stop here.
Sir, it was very insightful and empowering listening to you. So you have mentioned so many points. I mean, I'm many of the questions we as student communities as well as general public had for many years. You address them in a very swift and interesting fashion. Now coming to questions. What are your thoughts on making mandatory AI courses across all graduate curriculum? Whether it's about MBA or MBBS or engineering or agricultural studies, because some of the participants are asking those questions. What if we create a mandatory program, and from the regulatory part, making introductory AI courses and across all the curriculum, regardless of the stream, maybe something like a unit-based system for accessing and learning from a digital platform. What are your thoughts on that?
I am not a regulator, so I don't really understand all the challenges, and it'll be easy for me to say make it mandatory. I have very little idea about the challenges that they face in changing the curriculum and taking a vast step such as making it mandatory. In my heart of hearts, do I believe that making it mandatory might actually be beneficial? I do. But I think there is a step in between. And that step in between is from, zero pressure on teaching AI to making it mandatory. There is an in between path where you make it alluring to learn AI, more credits, rewards, national level curriculum. You have examinations such as NCERT scholarship exams. A similar thing, a national level, quizzes. Some of this is actually, by the way, I need to tell you that again, I see an amazing thing being done by Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. They have put up this portal called MyGov. I encourage all of you to go and put your feedback on what you don't like about your educational curriculum. The government listens. They have created a portal for you to go and talk to them and tell them about your ideas. Maybe something that is, creating an allurement to learn AI would be an in-between step before you go and make it mandatory. Mandatory is a tough word for me. And the reason why I say this is there are so many, steps in between that need to be considered before you say thou shalt do it, or we won't leave you. I think that kind of step is a little far off. Even though in my heart of hearts, I believe that AI, artificial intelligence, at some level is a horizontal. It is not a vertical. It is not just for engineers. It is for agriculturists. Why shouldn't they learn as they're, you know, going in their agricultural institutes to understand what is the produce like, what kind of predictive models they should have? How do they figure out the onset of disease and predict based on aerial surveys? Whether the locust is going to take over. Why shouldn't they be understanding weather patterns and saying, you know warning the farmers that there'll be a hailstorm, figure out something, or there might be a rain in the next 3 days, harvest your crop and put it safely. So, AI in many ways is a horizontal, because whether it be medicine or construction or manufacturing or retail or banking and financial services, everybody needs to have a basic understanding of it. I'm not saying they have to be engineers, but they have to be in a situation where if their technical team tells them, here is an interesting ideas, they should have enough introduction into it to be able to say, we are ready to catch it. Making it
Sir,
mandatory, I wouldn't say it.
Sir, another question. Since we are talking about the digital infrastructure out there and how everyone has an freedom right now to learn whatever they want, including AI. And since you are one of the leaders of Udemy, let me ask you, what are the major trends or user behavior you are seeing in these days in terms of AI learning, especially on online platforms?
So brilliant suggestion, brilliant question. Our path, I won't go into the statistics of it. There is tremendous interest in India. And these are people from rural India. We look at high level statistics of where people are coming from. Tremendous interest in learning science and technology through online platform, because it empowers them. It empowers them to study it at their will. There is also this community of what I call Divyangs, the people who are differently enabled. There is this community that is today, at a disadvantage. Imagine if you are a Divyang, how do you even reach a training center? How hard it is for you to travel from your home and reach a training center. Often you need the help of your parents and somebody else. For them, digital learning is a huge step forward. Digital learning can enable learning at their pace, in their homes, within the comforts of their environment, without asking anybody. Now, I'll also tell you this, and I'm making this point specifically, particularly to the Divyang community. It is known knowledge that when a certain part of your, when a certain ability is taken away from you, the brain readjusts and makes your ability in other areas much better. There is statistics that proves that people who are blind from birth, or blind in between, they have tremendous memory. They have tremendous sense of hearing. So the point that I'm trying to make is, whereas online learning is taking off in a mass measures in rural India, my appeal to everybody is, particularly for the Divyang community, and that community is almost 2 to 3 crores. It's roughly 2% of your population and 2% of your perhaps most brilliant minds. Many of you do not know, but the greatest Divyang in the world, one of them was Stephen Hawking, who wrote the theory of black hole. Isaac Newton was actually suffering from a particular form of problem. So were all these other, Thomas Alva Edison, this huge number of Divyangs who have done amazingly well. In India, we need to enable them to learn online. In fact, if there's one community that can benefit the most from it, it is that Divyang community. But in general, online learning is taking off. The colleges and even the schools need to take it into account, bring online learning, and enable this amazing platform of young people, which constitutes, I want to say about 25% of the country. Think about it, 300 million people. That's the population of all of US. That is probably the population of France, Germany, France, Germany, Italy, and UK and a few other countries combined. Probably the population of Western Europe.
Sir, I have another question. I mean, I'm taking up a question from one of our participants, Mr. Jigar Patel, and it's a two-part question. First, Mr. Jigar is asking, the question Jigar wants to know is, there are so many platforms out there providing AI courses. I mean, there are so many platforms, there are well-reputed platforms, as well as there are so many YouTubers who do some AI videos, and even they are starting their own online courses and classes and certifications and things like that. So what my question here is, how can you identify the right courses you should choose and not end up being scammed? And secondly, what Jigar Patel want to know is, he suggests the cost of certificate in many of this platform is very high, higher than what an average student can pay. What are your suggestions on that?
Excellent point, and my answer to that is value for money. Value for money. Remember, the most important commodity that you have is time. Time you can't make. You can make money. Today you are earning 100,000 rupees or 10,000 rupees or 5,000 rupees. There can be a time when you can earn 20,000 rupees. You can multiply your wealth. You cannot multiply the time you have at hand. Last year gone is gone. The year before gone is gone. You can't recreate it. So time is the most important commodity, and I find a sense of disrespect of it. So, for example, you're willing to spend money in a great meal. You're not willing to invest the same amount of money in education. So my point is, look for value for money. There is, of course, YouTube platform. You'll find some things that are good there, and some things that are just put there for the heck of it, because it is a platform where everything goes. So you have to make the effort. You have to spend the time to find out a needle in a haystack. And the question you have to ask yourself is my time valuable, that I don't look for all this junk stuff and find one nugget in it, versus go to a place where all of it is nuggets? So some of these educational platforms are providing that kind of service, and that is why people are paying for it. Now that's point number one. Point number two is, you also have to look at your pocket. So I'm not here to advocate that everybody, whether they can afford it or not, should buy from Udemy or similar other online learning platform. They have to look at how best to cut their cloth so that it fits. So I'm not advocating any of these things, but I'm just pointing out two simple facts. Do not think that your time is free. It is not. It will not come back to you. In 10 years' time, you will realize that if only you had spent maybe 1,000 rupees in education versus 5,000 rupees in going and eating good food, or buying a nice shirt, or buying a fashionable pant, you might find the value for money in education is higher. And maybe you had the option of going to a YouTube session on AI, and at the same time use that money to buy a pant. Perhaps buy a cheaper pant and spend that money in a online learning platform that is socially validated. What I mean by that is, like any other thing, when you go and buy something, do you want to be the first guy who buys it, or the 1,000th person where 999 people ahead of you have said, oh, this particular piece of wheat or rice or barley or atta is good. You want social validation. So if something is good, chances are there are a lot of people who have done that AI course and they have provided feedback. And based on that feedback, you should decide whether there is value for money in buying that course or there is value for money in taking that course for free, perhaps from YouTube channel and getting scammed. So that's totally your
Sir,
call.
I had to jump in here. We are running out of time.
Okay.
Sir, thank you very much for your insightful talk. And I know many of the people have their questions answered and they still have questions. Thank you very much, Prashant, Managing Director of Udemy in South Asia and India, for this wonderful talk. And you can check out his TED talk on how technology transforms rural India. And thank you for all participating. Just want to say a word about INDIAai. You can check out how different AI is applied across different sectors like agriculture, pharmacy, medicine, fintech in India AI website. The address is indiaai.in. You can find all the in-depth analysis and future webinars and other events that's going to happen at the India AI link. Thank you very much, Prashant, sir. It was a pleasure listening to you, sir.
Yeah. One final point I want to make to all the participants, please feel free to provide feedback on this webinar. If you liked it, I'd be glad to know. If there are areas that I should have covered, I would be happy to address them in future. And like I said, I'm an engineer by profession. I love continuous improvement. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you all for participating.